Handheld PCs have come a long way. From a niche with gamepad digital, more mainstream with the Steam Deck, and now we have loads of them being announced left and right. The Aya Neo, ROG Ally, MSI Claw, all of them offering more Windows-based computing in their handhelds. Today, we're diving into one of those, the largest and possibly most wacky in name. Here is my review of the Lenovo Legion Go. With hardware, the Legion Go is effectively a thick 8-inch tablet with controllers that attach on the side like the Nintendo Switch's Joy-Cons. The actual unit is relatively thick with ports on the top and bottom. On the top, we have a USB-C port, micro SD card slot, volume buttons, a set of vents, and the power button. Then we go to the bottom where we have a spare USB-C port and that's it. On the back, we have more vents and a long adjustable kickstand, much like what you'd find on the Switch OLED. Though it gets more interesting on the sides where we have little sliders to attach the controllers to the unit for portable play. The controllers themselves are also a bit more than what you'd expect. We have the basic D-pad analog sticks, face buttons, L and R triggers, but we also have multiple customizable buttons on the back, an extra button on each one at the very top for more UI software stuff once you get into the unit. The right controller has a pretty decent touchpad, and it can be separated and put into a base to function as a mouse. And finally, we have an IPS screen that is bright and beautiful. It's not quite the vibrance of an OLED screen, but it's on a completely other level when compared to an LCD. Now let's go into software. The Legion Go uses Windows 11 and is basically just a Windows laptop in tablet handheld form. That means the screen is touch-based for Windows navigation. With specs, it uses the AMD Ryzen Extreme Z1 processor, the same thing the ROG Ally uses. Built-in Radeon graphics, has 16GB of overall RAM, and it comes in 512GB and 1TB variations on the model. But back to Windows. The clunkiness of navigating Windows OS on a touchscreen is helped by the fact that this is an 8-inch tablet. It's pretty big, so keyboard typing is moderately comfortable, though they did program this handheld with some console-like user interface software to make navigation easier. If you tap the little extra buttons on the controllers, you can open up the Legion menu, bringing up a console UI where you can browse Legion game deals and navigate to all installed games, whether they are through Steam, Epic Games, or Xbox. Getting them installed does require moving around Windows, but once they're installed, it's very easy to just boot up and start a game with the controllers. And then the right stick's UI lets you easily alter settings like brightness, FPS counters, and my personal favorite, the TDP. You can change the TDP of this device on the fly at any given time, be it the quiet mode that uses very little power to making a custom template to crank it up to 30. You can also swap between 60Hz and 144Hz modes on the fly to let the unit break free of that 60 FPS limitation and run games up to 120 FPS. There is a downside here though. Occasionally, the Legion console UI won't work properly, listing 0 installed games when you actually have many installed. This has happened to me about 4 times over the past month. I've also noticed that the built-in FPS counter is very buggy, often not registering at all or only working for a bit and then stopping. Now that we know what it can do, let's talk about how it does it. We'll start on the software side and then go into handling and hardware. In essence, this thing has the capacity to do things well beyond the Steam Deck, and a lot of times it does. Now first, I've gotten a lot of pushback and criticism on my setup, and I'll explain that here. In BIOS, you can set the VRAM to 3, 4, and 8GB with a 6GB option currently in beta. What this means is you can take RAM away from the system to allocate for VRAM, pushing it towards graphics and performance. The thing is, the Legion isn't just a console. It's a Windows 11 computer, and with 16GB of overall RAM, if you take 8GB away for VRAM, that only leaves it with 8GB to do normal Windows background stuff. The more RAM you take away from the system, the less stable it'll be. Sure, you'll get higher performance in games, but it will also make higher fidelity games like Baldur's Gate 3 or Starfield much less stable and prone to crashing not only the game, but the entire operating system. Because of this, I view 4GB as the optimal level until we get 6GB out of beta. You won't get as many frames, but it's a much more stable and safe experience. Anyways, we can get some great results out of many different games. To cite some examples, I was able to get Fortnite Battle Royale running in performance mode with high textures to go between 90 and 120 FPS consistently in both solo and squad 0 build matches. For another example, the Legion Go can run Fallout 4 at a consistent 60 FPS on medium settings, while the Steam Deck needs low settings to get 40 to 60 in Diamond City. God of War 2018 gets between 40 and 70 FPS on low and original graphics, while the deck struggles to keep it in the 30s on low. And finally, the Halo Master Chief Collection can run everything at 60 FPS, including anniversary graphics in Halo 1 and 2, something the deck struggles with to this very day. But the bane of the existence of these handheld PCs is battery life, so what is that like? Obviously, keeping the TDP high uses more power, but to be honest, you really have to. You can drop the TDP down to quiet, but anything that isn't pretty much a couple decades old will tank the frame rate. Fortnite and God of War will be great in FPS, but the Battle Royale's 120 FPS will easily drop to 15 to 20 with lower TDP. Anyways, back to battery life. For the most part, expect about an hour and a half out of almost anything you want to play. Even going as far back as Tomb Raider Legend from the early 2000s will only increase the battery life to maybe an hour and 45 minutes instead of an hour and 30. To get more battery life, you gotta go to 2D games. And even then, things like Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster will only increase that to about 2.5 hours instead of 1.5. Though on the bright side, it is more battery than you would get out of the ROG Ally. With that thing maxed out, a lot of 3D games will get you less than an hour versus the Legion Go's an hour and a half. Now let's move on to hardware performance. How does the system handle? It's got some great features like the built-in microphone. It's not bad at all if you want to do voice chat. I'd even put it on the level of maybe a Blue Yeti mic. To give you an example, what you're hearing right now is me recording on my SM7B professional microphone. And what you're hearing right now is me talking into the built-in mic, holding the tablet up like a handheld. That's not too bad at all for something that's built into the system. Now onto the actual handling. It's a very large and heavy handheld, heavier than the Steam Deck, though the design of the controllers actually feels pretty comfy. They're large enough that your fingers won't interfere with the kickstand, and it feels pretty good to play. There is a bit of that adjustment to the right stick like what Switch users experience with the Nitro deck, but all in all, it feels good to use. And then there's the mouse mode for the right controller. Putting it into a base and using it like a flight stick is pretty cool. It works well enough for computing, but the movement just isn't quick and precise enough when playing a shooter. I'll admit it's very quirky and fun to use, but that's about as far as it goes. The only other downside to the system is the touch screen. In many shooting games, tapping the screen will register as you firing a shot. I've had dozens of times where I would be playing Fortnite or Halo and would graze the screen with my right thumb, leading the camera to look straight up and make firefights very frustrating. Thankfully, the controllers can be detached. I just wish there was a way to disable the touchscreen, even if just in shooting games. Now, before we conclude, let's talk about how it functions as a laptop. I effectively replaced my laptop with the Legion Go, getting a USB hub, installing all of my editing and recording software, and I've actually made a few videos just with the Legion Go, including my Cynthia Nintendo Switch review, many episodes on the Let's Play channel, and the review you're watching right now. For computing, it handles quite well. I have yet to have Sony Vegas Pro crash on me, everything from my capture card records flawlessly, and all around it works as a laptop replacement, at least when I have my USB-C hub in to connect a keyboard, mouse, and all of my peripherals. And of course, lower TDP mode does wonders for the battery life when doing normal computing. 30 TDP will only give you about an hour and a half of battery life, but on quiet TDP between watching Hulu and doing editing, that will increase to a bit over 3 hours. That's still measly by laptop standards, but much better than what you get with games. Now let's wrap this up. The Legion Go is quite the slick and fantastic piece of hardware. It's nice and big for Windows use, has a beautiful IPS screen, and enables a lot of great games to run smoothly on the go. Now on the downside, the built-in UI isn't super reliable with the FPS counters and installed games, the touchscreen causes frustration when playing shooters, and the battery life is abysmal without power banks at the ready, as is the case with pretty much all of these Windows handheld PCs. But if you're okay with shorter gaming sessions, it's a very impressive piece of tech. Reviews to Go rates the Lenovo Legion Go an 8 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.